welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into something fascinating, a topic that honestly causes a lot of confusion. The true meaning of fasting.
Right.
But maybe not in the way you think. Our source material today offers this, radical perspective. It's challenging some deep assumptions and giving us what feels like a real taste of grace.
Mm-hmm.
It could genuinely redefine your whole spiritual diet. So get ready to rethink maybe everything you thought you knew about abstaining.
Exactly, because for so many people, you hear fasting and, you immediately think physical deprivation, right?
Yeah, skipping meals.
Or maybe even something harsh like penance or, a way to try and earn God's favor.
Right.
Our mission today is really to go way beyond that surface stuff. We're aiming to uncover a really profound, actually liberating truth about what fasting truly means, especially within this context of grace.
Okay.
And how that directly impacts, your spiritual nourishment, your growth, even your spiritual authority.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a journey that might make you question your current spiritual menu.
That's so true. Many of us, we've heard about fasting, maybe even tried it.
Huh.
And sometimes it just feels like this huge burden, doesn't it? Or like some kind of strict religious rule you have to follow.
Yeah, that pressure.
And our source material, it starts right there, highlighting these really common and often, frankly, quite problematic experiences. You hear stories, right? People told to fast by leaders. And it leads to actual physical distress sometimes, or worse, these deep feelings of condemnation if they, fail, if they can't keep it up. Have you ever felt that kind of pressure?
Oh, absolutely. It's a common trap, isn't it? And what's really striking right from the get-go in our source is how firmly it clarifies. Look, this is not about promoting self-harm.
Okay.
Or this idea of earning points with God through works. Not at all. Now, sure, physical weakness can sometimes make you feel more reliant on God.
Like Jacob wrestling.
Exactly. Like Jacob at Peniel wrestling with God when he was physically spent, at his most vulnerable. But the core message here isn't make yourself suffer to impress God. That completely misses the point. It's more about recognizing our inherent human limits and turning to God's provision, his strength, but crucially, never at the cost of your health or your spiritual freedom. That distinction is just paramount.
Okay, let's really dig into that because, that immediately challenges a huge misconception.
It does.
Our source pushes back hard against fasting as a way to, earn forgiveness or somehow buy a better relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
It brings up that powerful question from Paul in Galatians 3:3. He asks believers, having begun by the Spirit, are you now being perfected by the flesh? That's not just some ancient theological point, is it? It hits home for anyone who's felt that subtle pressure to perform for God, to do more, be better.
It absolutely does. That question from Paul just cuts right to the heart of it all. The teaching we're looking at makes it crystal clear. Salvation, our whole relationship with the Father, it's established purely through Jesus' finished work.
Only Jesus.
Only his sacrifice. It's not, and it never, ever can be, through any human effort, any self-denial, any religious act we do, no matter how sincere. Our source uses this powerful phrase, God's love for us is already to the extreme.
To the extreme.
Yeah, think about that. If his love is already maxed out, how could anything we do, fasting, wearing sackcloth, tearing clothes, even certain prayers, how could that possibly improve a relationship that's already perfect through Christ?
You can't add to perfect.
Exactly. To think we could, as Paul implied, that would be so foolish. It's like trying to touch up the Mona Lisa with a crayon.
That's a really stark contrast to how many people are taught to view these practices, isn't it?
Totally reframes it.
It completely flips the purpose.
Yeah.
And this conversation is really going in some unexpected directions because the source then jumps into Colossians chapter 2.
Ah, yes.
And Paul's asking again, why would we still live by these, he calls them worldly elementary principles? Things like, do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, especially if we've died with Christ.
Right, if you're dead to them.
Exactly. And it points out how these rigid rules, they often become tools for manipulation. You hear teachings like, fast or you won't get healed, or you need to fast because of this severe sin.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And what's really eye-opening here is how strongly these specific rules and teachings are condemned.
Condemned.
Yeah, the source calls them lies from the devil and worldly elementary principles. Why? Because they drag people back into bondage, back into a system based on works, not grace.
Okay, but does that mean physical fasting is bad then?
No, that's a key distinction. The teaching isn't opposing physical fasting in and of itself.
Yeah.
It even acknowledges the speaker sometimes fasts physically.
Right.
But it draws a very firm line. If fasting becomes what's described as harsh treatment of the body, the original text uses a phrase, gadai kenshon, which means like a severe, self-imposed hardship.
Okay.
Especially if the motive is just to curb fleshly desires through sheer willpower. The teaching says, quite bluntly, it's completely ineffective.
Wow.
The whole emphasis is on why you're doing it. What's the motive? And rejecting anything that turns into a legalistic burden or condemns you, it's about spiritual freedom, always, not self-punishment.
So if it's not about earning salvation, not about following worldly rules, what about the idea that fasting makes our prayers more powerful or earns us more blessings?
Yes, that one's common too.
Our source tackles that head on. It gives an example. Someone thinking fasting prayer is somehow better, has more clout than regular prayer, or other teachings linking more service to getting more blessings. We've all heard that kind of thing.
Yeah, let's just pull back for a second and look at the bigger picture here because this is so crucial. Romans 11, verse 6.
Okay.
Paul lays it out so plainly. If it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace.
Simple as that.
What does that tell us about trying to earn anything from God? It means all spiritual gifts, healing, wisdom, every single blessing, they are purely by grace. Full stop. They're gifts, completely unearned. Our source actually calls the idea that we deserve something because of our actions, this sort of good karma, thinking the most evil thought in the flesh.
Whoa, that's strong. Why?
Because it directly blocks us from just accepting the free gift, the gift of salvation and all its benefits.
Yeah.
So fasting cannot be a transaction for grace. It can't attract more blessings. You simply cannot earn what's already freely given.
That is a powerful, maybe even uncomfortable truth for a lot of us.
It challenges deeply ingrained ideas.
It forces you to examine, what you really believe about God's generosity. And speaking of challenging things, Jesus himself talked about fasting, didn't he? Matthew 6.
He did.
Telling people, don't make it obvious, don't be like the hypocrites putting on a show.
Right, don't look gloomy.
Which suggests even back then, there was already a deeper meaning, something beyond just not eating.
It really does. And it begs the question, what was Jesus really getting at there? He clearly wasn't banning fasting outright, but he was directly calling out the motive. Fasting for show, to be seen by others, to seem extra pious. Right. It's just self-serving, isn't it? Yeah.
It's about you, not God.
Exactly. It's a performance for human applause. And Jesus says, well, that applause is its only reward. The spiritual point, as our teaching explains, is that true acts for God, they're done in secret, from the heart, not for human validation.
Okay.
And this subtle but really profound shift in focus, it perfectly sets the stage for the true hidden mystery of fasting that our source is about to unveil.
All right, the hidden mystery. So where does that take us, this profound revelation?
It takes us straight to Matthew chapter 9, Jesus' interaction with John the Baptist's disciples.
Oh, yes, they come up to him.
They come to him and ask essentially, hey, why don't your disciples fast? We fast, the Pharisees fast, what's up with your guys?
Right. Seems like a fair question.
That feels like a pivotal moment. Jesus could have just given a simple explanation, but he does something much bigger. What he says is groundbreaking. He uses this analogy of the bridegroom. He asks, can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them?
The bridegroom. Jesus.
Exactly. This is huge. It marks the shift. The old covenant, where John's disciples still were, focused on law, on ritual. Fasting was often tied to sorrow, repentance, longing for God.
Okay.
But Jesus, the bridegroom, is here. So it's not a time for mourning. It's a time for joy, for celebration, a spiritual feast, not fasting in that old way.
A feast.
Yes. The teaching explains it like trying to put new wine, new covenant grace into old wineskins, old covenant law.
It breaks both.
It breaks both. When you are with Jesus, when you're in his presence through grace, you are metaphorically eating the best food there is. You're consuming Jesus himself, the living word, the bread of life. It's a whole new spiritual reality.
Wow. Okay, that completely reorients things. So if true fasting isn't physical deprivation in this new reality, what are we supposed to be fasting from, spiritually speaking?
Great question.
Our source points to that fascinating story, the one that trips people up. The disciples failing to cast out a demon, Mark 9, Matthew 17. Yes. And Jesus says, this kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer and fasting. Which everyone assumes means physical fasting, right?
Almost always misinterpreted that way. But that right there is the key to unlocking spiritual fasting in the scripture. The fasting Jesus means here is absolutely not physical.
Okay. So what is it?
The real clue is actually a few verses earlier in Mark 9, verses 14 to 16. What were the disciples doing just before Jesus arrived?
They were arguing.
Yes, they were debating with the scribes, arguing, getting tangled up in legalistic discussions. Our source reveals that this debate, this engagement in worldly wisdom and legalism, that's what drained their spiritual authority. They were, in effect, eating stones.
Eating stones.
Consuming dry, dusty, worldly wisdom and legalistic teachings instead of life-giving truth. And that kind of spiritual food, it makes them like infants, as Hebrews talks about.
Only able to handle milk.
Exactly. Only able to handle milk. Unable to discern spiritual realities or operate in mature spiritual power because their spiritual diet was completely wrong.
So eating stones isn't just like a quirky metaphor for bad teaching. It's saying something profound about what actually nourishes our spirit or doesn't.
Wow.
Can you expand on that? What does eating stones really mean for us?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
It means consuming the leaven. Remember, Jesus warned about the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees.
Right, their teaching.
In Matthew 16, he warned them about it. The disciples thought he meant actual bread, like, did we forget the loaves again?
Yeah.
But he immediately corrected them. No, I mean, their doctrine, their teachings, that false legalistic stuff. So this spiritual fasting is about stopping the intake of that.
Okay.
Stopping the consumption of legalistic teachings, worldly principles, human opinions, trying to mix with God's grace. These things are like that thin food, the dambo de shiwu that the Israelites hated in the desert.
The manna they got tired of. Well, no, the stuff they wanted instead of manna, right?
Well, it relates to their dissatisfaction, yeah. But the point is, this legalistic food, it prevents us from truly receiving and enjoying God's simple, abundant grace. Constantly eating legalism, engaging in endless debates and rule following, it fosters worldly wisdom, and that actively hinders God's wisdom and true spiritual growth. It's like trying to quench your thirst with sand instead of water.
That clarifies so much. So the message really is be incredibly careful, incredibly discerning about what we feed our spirits, what we allow to shape our understanding.
Absolutely.
It makes me think of John chapter 6. People keep asking Jesus, what works should we do? And he keeps pointing them back to simply believing. They even ask for a sign like manna, still looking for something external, something they can do or see.
And isn't that just the human tendency? Always focusing on the external works, the physical signs, rather than just internal faith, rather than simply receiving what God has already provided. Look, manna in the wilderness, it didn't lead to lasting faith, did it? It led to grumbling, wanting something else. Jesus cuts through all that and says, I am the true bread of life.
He is the food.
He is the sustenance. He's not offering another temporary fix or a new list of rules. So the ultimate spiritual fasting is simply to stop consuming everything else.
Everything else.
All the legalism, the human wisdom, the worldly ideas, the self-effort. Stop trying to mix it all together and instead consume Jesus himself. Feast on him.
Through his word, through relationship.
Through his word of grace, through relationship, yes. It's about wholeheartedly receiving pure, unadulterated grace, not trying to water it down or, misuse it, like that weird Old Testament rule about not boiling a kid in his mother's milk.
Right. What's that about here?
Our source uses it metaphorically. It's about mixing things that shouldn't be mixed. Trying to blend the pure, life-giving nourishment of grace with the very things that oppose it, like legalism and works. That pure, unmixed grace is what truly nourishes and transforms us.
Okay, so if we embrace this radical idea of spiritual fasting, saying no to legalism, feasting on grace, what happens? What does it lead to in our lives? How do we grow?
Well, that brings us right to the end of our source material, Acts chapter 20, verse 32.
Paul's farewell.
Yes, Paul commending the believers. He says, I commend you to God and to the word of his grace. And listen to this, which is able to build you up and to give you the inheritance among all those who are sanctified.
Wow. The word of his grace builds you up.
Exactly. That is the true, life-giving spiritual food. Think about it like diet again. Babies need milk, right? Simple truths. But grace, the word of grace, it builds maturity. It enables us to move beyond that milk. Simple, maybe literal interpretations to handle solid food.
Deeper truths.
The deeper, richer truths of God's grace. And this maturity, it isn't just head knowledge. It's essential for actually walking in spiritual authority, using spiritual gifts, like casting out demons, as we saw earlier.
It all connects. The teaching really emphasizes you cannot serve two masters. You can't try to blend grace and legalism. They're fundamentally opposed. To truly receive and walk in God's power, his revelation, we have to, as the source puts it, separate ourselves from constantly feeding on legalistic debates and worldly thinking. It's a conscious choice of spiritual diet, and it directly impacts our spiritual strength, our authority, our freedom.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? This is a deep dive into the true meaning of fasting. Well, it seems it's far more about our spiritual diet, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
About what we choose to consume and what we choose to abstain from in our spirits, much more than just physical deprivation. It sounds like it's about consciously choosing to say no, to fast from the stones of legalism, performance-based religion, worldly wisdom, maybe even the need for others' approval.
Yeah.
And instead choosing to feast on the pure, undiluted bread, Jesus Christ himself, in his incredible, boundless grace. Which really brings up an important question for you to maybe sit with. In your own spiritual walk, what are you really consuming day to day? Are you filling yourself with teachings, with input that empowers you through grace, that brings peace and freedom? Or are you, maybe without realizing it, eating stones, consuming things that leave you feeling condemned or like you're always striving, always spiritually weak?
Yeah.
Just consider what you're allowing to nourish your spirit. And think about how that choice impacts your freedom, your joy, and ultimately your ability to walk in the fullness of God's power and his purpose for you. Maybe, just maybe, a new spiritual diet is exactly what's needed.